Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I am your host, Kevin Powers. I'm also the festival director and program director for Something Wicked Film Festival and Events. And welcome to our podcast today. Now, today we're going to be speaking with a film that maybe a lot of people have not seen, but we hope that the film you will actually go out and venture and try and find it because it is a film worth looking for. The film today is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. And to talk about this film with me, we have Sarah Panozzo, who will try to dissect this film a little bit, and hope that you enjoy our dissection of this movie. Say hello to everyone, Panozzo.
Hey guys.
I always love to have Panozzo on the show because she's got such a great personality when it comes to horror films that she actually laughs at some of my stupid puns that I put out there. So without further ado, we're going to talk about The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is an unusual horror film in that, one, it actually has a really great cast to it, and two, it is not your typical horror film. So I would like to first ask you, what was your impressions of the film when you first saw it?
I actually don't remember the first time I saw it, but it was one of those movies that stuck in my brain for the longest time. And it is one of those that kind of lives with me no matter what. It's a beautifully shot film. It's got some wonderful jump scares and just some general tension building and scares in general. But like you said, the cast is amazing. The fact that it almost all takes place in one little room is quite a feat. But it is just a beautifully done film.
Yeah, so I'm speaking of the cast because the number one reason why I saw this film before realizing who directed it is because of the cast. I'm a
Yes.
Brian Cox fan. I actually love Emil Hirsch, who I was not expecting to be in a horror film. Although I now realize that he's done a lot of things in all different types of genres. Brian Cox, on the other hand, has been in everything.
Yeah.
He's done a little bit of everything, but these two together made me want to watch the film itself because I knew nothing about this film when I went in to see it. I and forgive me if I screw up the name of the director's the pronunciation of the director's name, Andre
Oh,
Ovredal.
yeah, Overdoll.
Oh, so I've seen some of his other films, and I didn't know he directed this when it came out. It was literally me seeing, oh, wait, there's a Brian Cox movie with Emil Hirsch, and it's a horror movie. What? I have to go see this.
Yeah,
It's
I think the director is the reason why I initially found this movie was I remember finding Troll Hunter back in like 2011, 2012, which is also a fantastic monster movie. Um, and it's so incredibly shot. The animation is so well done. But then when I was looking at the rest of the movies he's done, and I think I've seen like every single one of his except for like one. Because he even did the most recent Last Voyage of the Demeter, which was also really well done. Um, but he tells some very interesting stories when he does his original stuff. And this is one of them. Like, this is something, the closest thing I've ever seen to this is Stephen King has a short story about a guy who's basically completely paralyzed and he's being gone through on an autopsy because they think he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the closest thing I think I've ever seen to this because it's such a unique story.
Mm. It is, especially. And the thing is, I don't want to give too much away, but the ideal that these two coroners, one's a father and one's a son who thinks he's an up and coming coroner, suddenly get thrust with a body with no markings on it, and it was half buried, and they have no idea who she is, so she's just known as Jane Doe, and the cops obviously want to know what caused her death, and then the whole movie is more or less her autopsy as seen through the eyes of these coroners with who start to see and experience unexplained phenomenon, which leads them into solving a mystery of who this person actually was. I thought that concept was very original and very captivating.
Yes.
Kept me on the edge of my seat. Even like there's nothing really happens overtly for like the first hour or so.
Yeah, it's really slow and it takes its time to build this relationship between father and son where I think the son is like, he's supposed to be a third generation coroner, but he's also like wanting to get out and do other stuff. Like he's got a girlfriend, he wants to go out and do things with her and do all this stuff. And constantly throughout the movie, he's like, I don't like this. Something is wrong. I need to leave. His
Hmm.
dad's like, no, this is just any other patient. And things just get progressively weirder. You get these nice, it's shot in widescreen. So you get those nice, like haunting shots like you do from John Carpenter, where you like, you're waiting for something in the background. And
Yep.
a lot of times that pays off because there are the little things that they do, that little callbacks throughout the entire film, from like the bell
Yes.
sound throughout the entire movie, or all of a sudden there's like the cat. Like there's little hints and pieces throughout the entire film, and it just has this one giant payoff
Yeah.
that it's it's unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole situation is unbelievable, but at the same time, you can totally see this happening.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great setup for a movie that's more or less like a chamber story, like you said. It's really in a small location. So focusing on this father and son's relationship is really what keeps the audience engaged, and the mystery. As the mystery unfolds, you see a younger generation trying to solve it, as well as the older generation, which sees it in a different light. There has to be a reason for everything, as the father is trying to inundate with the son. And of course, the son is more open to the more unusual aspects of the story. As you can see, I'm trying to not tell everyone the
I
big
know.
because I think it's such an effective reveal that I do not want to give it away. I don't, if I recall correctly, I don't think I knew anything about the movie when I saw it. And so
Same.
I went in completely blind. I hadn't seen a trailer or anything. Like I said, I went in there and said, "Oh, these are two great actors. Let me watch this horror film," and I picked it up and watched it. That's how I got to see it. So I will say that it's best to watch this film without knowing already how it resolves or how it
Yes.
ends, because that ruins the little twist and your enjoyment of the film as a whole.
Yes, it's definitely good to go in blind. And speaking of the Chekhov's gun in the room, like the fact that that was an actress on the table the whole time, it wasn't like, I mean, apparently they like they obviously they had different parts that were used for the autopsy scenes, but the woman herself, who they would show her face and everything, was actively meditating to pretend that she was dead on the table, which is, she did a really good job. It's
Creepy.
very creepy.
Perfect. That's a perfect word for it. The whole film has this air of creepiness, especially considering that their morgue is like this really, like you said, third generation, 100-year-old morgue
Yes.
that they actually say this in the film, that they added on to generation to generation. So those little story aspects and those little touches to the set and to the location give this film an atmosphere that it probably wouldn't have had it been made a modern day morgue or a modern day facility. So
Right. It definitely adds tension to the family history. And then you like we said, the father son back and forth is really well done. It's well built. And then like they hint at like how the mother died and all these other things about how the father might have kept certain information from the son just because of what happened. But like it's such a great, even if there was no horror elements to it, it would be a great family drama,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is what I really appreciate about this.
That's an interesting outlook. You're right. You're absolutely right. It would be a very interesting family drama, even if they didn't have the supernatural aspects to it. And I didn't think about that, because in reality, none of this stuff really shows up until the very end. You hear
Right.
bits of it, but that could be just any type of film that's more like a thriller mystery film. And then, of course, you have the big thing at the end. What I really liked about the film is that they don't, even though there's subtle pieces of CGI in it, it doesn't take away from the film. There's not a whole lot of
Not at
it.
all.
The director purposely leaves a lot in shadow, so it gives you that John Carpenter type of feel. I would have never
Yes.
thought about that until you mentioned it. But
Yeah,
that's
because I think this was like right after my John Carpenter binge, and I was like, hey, look, it's all like shot the same way. But yeah, it shows you very little so that your imagination can do a lot of the work, and it is done very well.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So I'm gonna take a little tangent off this because I still don't want to reveal too much about the film to the audience just yet because I believe this is a film best discovered. But I do
Yes.
want to talk about the director's other film, Troll Hunter, which is what got
Oh
it on the
gosh.
map. The reason why I wanted to discuss it because they're so different from each other
Yes,
that it's hard to
absolutely.
believe that they are made by the same person.
Yeah, I mean, his stuff kind of goes over three different categories because you've got like Troll Hunter and Last Voyage of the Demeter, which are kind of like your monster movies. Same
Hmm.
thing with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And then you've got like Autopsy of Jane Doe and which are more family dramas with horror. But like I really enjoyed Last Voyage of the Demeter. I know a lot of people didn't, but if you're not a Dracula super fan and know that that's a chapter out of the book, I mean, you're kind of missing out. It was so much fun.
I will say this right now that I really enjoyed the Last Voyage of Demeter more than I thought I was going to. As everyone knows, I'm not a big vampire fan, and Dracula doesn't really do much for me. But I like the aspect of this one being told from the perspective of the people on the ship and not so much Dracula. I thought
Yes.
having a feral Dracula was very interesting, and the way they portrayed him in this movie was actually really well done. The tension between all the characters on the ship with having an African American on there who's supposed to be their doctor and also shipmate as well as a female character also
Mhm.
added a lot of tension to the story, and I thought the director did an amazing job with that. On the other hand, when we look at Troll Hunter, we just look at one hell of a great ride with a big bunch of trolls everywhere. And I'm like,
It's so much fun.
you know what? Trolls to me are interesting, but this movie, Troll Hunter and Troll, which came out I think 2 years ago on Netflix,
Yeah.
are two of the most fun movies about a freaking troll that I've ever seen. And I don't
But
know why, because trolls shouldn't be fun. They shouldn't be in
no, I mean, Troll Hunter is so creepy though at the same time because you've got the whole comedy bits of the lore of like, well, they can smell Christians. And you're like, okay, whatever. And then you literally watch it happen and it looks like, oh, what were they called? The Blue Meanies and everything like that out of Yellow Submarine. They looked like real versions of that. And it was just haunting.
Oh
Some of
my.
the trolls are just so creepy and disgusting.
They are, they are. But you kind of wonder how the director went from that to something like the Autopsy of Jane Doe,
Yeah.
because they're so far removed. But he seems adept at doing both genres. And let's not forget that Troll Hunter is a found footage film, which
Yes, it is.
harder to achieve, but he does it.
Yes.
Probably better than most found footage films.
Yeah, it's arguably one of the best found footage films I've ever seen,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
especially with its the amount of CGI that goes into it. It makes it so well done. And
exactly.
it's this director is such a sleeper director. Like he bangs out a movie and then like 4 or 5 years later he'll put out something else that's completely different and nobody has like connected the dots that this is all the same guy.
Yeah, it took me a while to realize that he also directed Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah.
I was like, because that was another movie. I was like, really? He went from Troll Hunter to Autopsy of Jane Doe to Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This guy is just all over the map here.
Yeah.
But I do really enjoy Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark as well. Surprisingly, I think.
I I couldn't do it. As a kid, I loved the stories, but the pictures just got to me way too much. So watching them come to life on film was way too much. I could not. I watched it once and I will never watch it again.
I went backwards. I watched the movie first, and then I went back to read the stories because I was so interested in reading the stories, the original stories that the movie was based on.
Oh, I remembered every single one of those. The one with the zit on her face and it's full of spiders has been one of my active nightmares since I was a child.
Oh my god!
Like I used to take the book and I would have a white piece of paper that would just like cover the pictures so I could read the stories because they were just too much.
Well, hopefully he'll do justice to the books again on
Hmm.
the sequel, since I heard he's doing the sequel. So it'll be interesting to see how he would attack the sequel, having already done the first film, and then of course done another adaptation, which is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's very interesting. But now getting back to the autopsy of Jane Doe. I just the thing is, I'm trying to build a little bit of leeway for audience members who have not seen this, but they have seen some of his other films. So I want you, as we're talking, if you've seen Troll Hunter, if you've seen The Last Voyage of the Demeter, if you've seen Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but you haven't seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe, it's equally as well done, and you should definitely check it out. So The Autopsy of Jane Doe, Emil Hirsch. I mean, let's talk a little bit about Emil Hirsch, who
Yeah.
I'm always thinking of in Into the Wild. I think it's Into the Wild, and
Yes.
a Speed Racer, and some of his other movies that he's done. When I'm not thinking of Emil Hirsch, is a horror movie called The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yeah, he doesn't do a whole lot of horror from what I remember, but like him as the son character is like him with Brian Cox. First of all, never would have thought they would have been like a match made in heaven acting with each other because it is such a beautiful relationship to watch bloom on screen.
Yes.
Like I could watch if they were on the next True Detective, I would watch them. I don't care what the story is. Them acting together is just beautiful. And I mean, yeah, like Emil Hirsch, known him from Speed Racer and then the couple of other things that like I've really that were kind of niche. But
Yes.
like it's just so interesting
Hmm.
watching him in this movie.
I think for me, I think both of these actors surprisingly are so good at giving those subtle looks their
Yes.
characters that they seem natural as father and son, and they actually the audience is invested in their story, not only because of the fact that they're, Emil Hirsch's character is going through a conundrum because he doesn't want to continue with the whole father son generational thing at the morgue. He wants to venture out on his own, and his obligation to his father. This could have been so badly mishandled by someone else without his talents.
Yes, and that kind of goes into the whole story. And like, if we end up having a spoiler section at the end of this episode, there is some interesting theories about how much he's willing to help his father and how much that actually ruins their relationship just a little bit. But no, like he can't say no to his dad. And that's kind of what it comes down to at the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. Because you're right, his character does say constantly throughout the movie they should leave, they should go, and yet he feels obligated to stay with his father, who constantly thinks that there is a logical explanation for everything.
Yeah, and if they would have just left it one more day, who knows what would have happened.
They would have did an autopsy in the middle of the daylight hours and probably not experienced nearly as much mystery and chaos as they eventually do get to.
Uh, I wouldn't even say that. I'd say probably the exact same thing would happen. Just because of like you get the creepy radio playing the 70s like hippie music, that's just a little much. And this big storm rolls in and then or does it?
You know what? You bring up an aspect of the film that I will try. I just want your opinions on is the music that's playing on the radio. Now there is hint that the Jane Doe is a much older person in the 70s, uh, because of the story, the history of the story.
Right. So
And you
where does the music come from?
exactly. I'm like, this is interesting music to be playing, but I'm not sure what the motivation for this music is. That's the only aspect of the film that leaves a mystery on my brain pan. Is that why this music, and why music at all? I mean, it could have just played
So
radio stuff.
there are a couple of throwaway lines, and I think it might end up being part of the mother's relationship with them because Brian Cox called his wife Ray of Sunshine. So then they're singing the song Let the Sun Shine In the rest of
Ah,
the day. So I think it had more to do with she was affecting them. Because like Brian Cox, when he was younger, based on roughly ages for the film, probably would have been about in the 70s with his wife. So that was the kind of thing that I put together, is that it was more trying to affect them like it is the rest of the film, where things are meddling in their brain,
hmm.
and just altering their reality. But yeah, it's one of my first notes was actually the sound effects and the sound design in general,
Uh-huh.
because like you hear the fluorescent tubes buzzing the entire time. You can hear the emptiness and the reflectivity of the morgue. It's so well done. And then you get just that like some sharp sounds like the zipper on the body bag, or
Hmm.
you get the bell that cuts through you like a knife. Um, it's it's just very well done. Like you can just sit there and listen to it and it will put you in a place that you are not comfortable.
Yeah, sound plays sound and the sound design and the sound editing play a huge part in creating the mood and atmosphere for this film. And keeping audiences on the edge of their seat. We mentioned the bell, and I just love
Mhm.
that they actually use that aspect in this film as
Yes.
a story element, and it just played along throughout the entire film in multiple different ways because it is creepy as hell.
Yeah, when you go into that old school like mythology of being a mortician, I mean, like you talk about they would put the bells on these people's feet so that when these people who were basically in comas in the olden times would wake up, and like you end up with the whole zombie mythology and a vampire mythology with these things where they would put bells into caskets to make sure people didn't wake up and then not have a way to get out. So the fact that they still kept up with this kind of mythology in their own current time morgue is actually really funny until it's not.
Until it's not. Especially since they play a joke on Emil Hirsch's girlfriend.
Oh my gosh.
uh, so and when I think about it, there's really what four characters in the film: the sheriff, Emil
The
Hirsch.
sheriff, the two guys, the body, and the girlfriend. I mean, they briefly show the family who lived in the house where the Jane Doe was found, and they found all of them like completely decimated and bloody, like they were attacked, but nobody knows what happened. And
Yeah.
then you get these four rotating characters around this dead body, and it just gets very interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking of and you may remember this movie. I may have to look it up. The Christina Ricci movie where she's the body with Justin Long and Liam Neeson. I can't remember the name.
Oh,
This was more effective movie than that one, but I can't remember the movie. It's very rare when movies like this actually happen. I know there was that. Oh, what was the Awake movie? I think it was.
yeah,
Never saw it.
Afterlife.
I think that's his Afterlife, where it has a very similar type of story aspects to it, but this one's a much more effective one because the cast was so good.
Yes.
I hate to say this, I like Liam Neeson, but he doesn't always fit every role he's in.
Well, and it's got Justin Long, so you know that it's going to be a weird horror movie if he's in it.
The guy who's known for doing weird horror movies. I don't think he'll ever get out of it, and some of them are really good, and some of them are just fucking weird. Uh,
Yeah,
I still haven't seen Tusk, by the way. I
I will never watch that movie. I will never watch it.
Oh, come on. We're going to discuss Tusk on a future episode of Conversations in Horror, and you're going to be the guest on that one because I'll have to make you watch it.
If that's the case, you're going to have to like pay me to watch it. And at that point, you might as well record my facial everything during that movie because I just can't. Just thinking of that image makes me want to vomit.
Oh, but you did see, oh my God, what was the movie that Justin Long was just in?
Malignant?
No, was
Oh
he?
no, not Malignant. That was the other one. No,
Oh God,
I know exactly which one you're
the
talking about.
Airbnb movie. Oh my
Yes.
God, I can't believe I don't remember it, and it's one of my favorite movies of that year. Oh, I am such a numbskull. Uh, but people listening out there, you should know
Barbarian. Barbarian.
Barbarian. See, because I never understood why they
Wonderful.
called it Barbarian. As much as I love that movie, I never understood why they called it that. But Justin
They
Long,
they they call it barbarian because of what happens down there. It's what the old man is.
yeah, but you don't see the old man for like a little bit of the movie. You kind of think it might be a much better title than Barbarian. I mean, it's effective. Don't get me wrong, but you think it'd be a better title for the movie. But I did absolutely love that movie, and Justin Long is very entertaining, and he has a knack of
Yes.
playing the most despicable characters that shit happens to.
Yes.
Even in his earliest film, of Jeepers Creepers,
Oh my gosh.
Justin Long has a lot of shit happen to him for doing stupid stuff. One day I will see Tusk, because I like that type of thing, and then we'll get back to Autopsy of Jane Doe, because as you can see, we don't want to give away too much for Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yes,
Both
it's
of us,
definitely a worthy experience to feel while
exactly,
you are watching.
exactly, because by the time they start, that Emil Hirsch and his father start
Piecing it together.
piecing it together, it's actually you feel for the kid, you feel for the character, you feel for what happens to Jane Doe, because
Yes.
it's so barbaric.
Yes, it
Uh,
really is.
and so those type of things are much more palatable when you're watching the film and we're not revealing it. So I just like to tell people that, because I this is one of those few films where I believe, and like Barbarian, I would, if we ever have a conversation about Barbarian, I'm not going to reveal the freaking movie. That would be ruining it for the people who have never seen it, because that movie is so effective the second half because of the
Yes.
stuff that goes on. So
And this one is so effective in that sense because like we've said, the first half of the movie is a completely different movie. It's just a family drama, two men trying to go through a dead body, and then you end up feeling for this dead body so much.
Yep.
Like it's just kind of heartbreaking.
Yep. So, so what are we missing here? What can we tell people about the Autopsy of Jane Doe without giving anything away, Panozzo?
Uh, One of my favorite quotes, "What the fuck is going on?" That's basically this entire movie. You're trying to figure out what is going on with this situation, and it's Brian Cox. I mean, like you look at Brian Cox in Trick or Treat versus Brian Cox in this, and they're so similar character-wise, but they're so different.
Yes, yeah. Well, we don't really give two shits about what happens to him in Trick or Treat, but in this
No.
movie we do. But he's
Yes,
so good at it.
absolutely. He's
Uh,
so good.
I would also put in there his brief performance in, I believe, The Ring 2.
The first one.
Is it the first one?
It was the American remake, yeah, because he was the father.
Yeah, he's the father, but there was there 6, 7 fucking Ring movies now. I'm losing track of all of them now. They're as bad as the Ju-on films. There's too many of them. I can't.
Yeah, there's now a battle movie between what's the character's name from Ju-on
Yeah, Sudoku versus Kyoko.
versus it's so great.
I've seen it. Did you see it? Just so you know. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, I could talk about the Ring movies on another time and we can compare both of them. I've just the first ones, the US and the original. But no, like this movie has so many interesting scenes and just the way it's filmed, the cuts of Jane Doe's face throughout the movie as it tells its own story is just so beautifully done. Like I said, I really appreciate it was a real actress on the table
Yeah.
portraying this because it definitely added to the actual film instead of seeing this lifeless dummy.
I agree.
As well.
I believe if they had gone with a dummy, after a while, you would think that you would realize it's a dummy on the table because so
Yeah.
many angles and so much footage has her in it. It's much more effective to have a real actress in that role,
Yeah.
though she says nothing other than lie on the table. It's got to be the easiest paycheck she ever had. Just meditate and sit there as though you're dead.
Well, she
That,
literally puts it all out there. So
well,
I mean,
that,
like,
she's probably
she's
cold as shit too.
yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable what they were able to do with this film with like there wasn't even a budget listed anywhere of how much this
Oh,
cost to make. Um, but yeah, I mean, I got to imagine it's pretty small. There weren't a ton of effects. Everything was very practical versus CG. And it, like I said, it's a very impactful movie with very limited everything. Like you don't get the stupid jump scares, scare cord and stuff like that. Like you get some very effective jump scares throughout the entire film.
yeah.
And you know how I feel about jump scares. I do not like them. This one, I live for it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that, and I think there's only one that almost becomes a jump scare, and that's really the cat that when the cat it's
Yeah, I mean,
but
there's quite a few. There's a couple in the office scene. There's a couple when they're near the end of the autopsy, and I mean then the ending of the movie in general has some wonderful scare
effective,
scenes.
effective scare.
They're very effective.
I'd say that if your jump scare more or less is part of the story of your film and not just a stupid diversional tactic, I think it's
Mhm.
very effective. I think someone like John Carpenter was able to do that really well as the Wes Craven was king of the jump scare.
Yes, it's very much like Michael Myers jump scares where you can just see him in the background or he slowly appears versus like the Nun where all of a sudden it's like, boo, there's a face. But
You're picking on me again, aren't you?
I
Because
am,
I
I
like,
am.
I like the Nun.
But no, this movie is just it's so beautifully done. It's
It is.
definitely kind of like an art house flick just because of the way it's shot. I mean, it's got some beautiful colors for those like video nerds. It's it's got some like really beautiful stuff going on with it. But yeah, it's overall it's a great movie. It's probably one of my favorites and it definitely stays with you after you're done watching it.
It does, which is why we're still not going to tell about the ending of the film
I
because
know.
we want audiences to actually be affected by this movie because it will stay with you. That being said, I'm not going to speak too much more about the movie, mostly because the thing is this: there's not many great lower budget horror films out there with a great cast that can deliver 100% of the time. Now, we talk a lot on this show about films done by A24 and Neon and some of the other boutique horror labels out there that do these type of higher end horror films that are very effective without relying on jump scares and your typical teenage horror movie tropes. This is one of those films that I hope that a lot more audiences get open to and see because it's so good. And I want to thank my special guest, Panozzo, for joining me on discussing or not discussing the autopsy of Jane Doe. But she did help me dissect this conversation real well. And she allowed me not to be a barbarian when I was doing it. So I want to thank you all for joining us for Conversations in Horror. Seek out some of our other episodes. We've done a lot of great film reviews throughout the year. You're gonna enjoy them. They'll like, entertain you. They'll engage you. But what they won't do is tell you what happens at the end, because that would just be barbaric of us. Thank you so much for joining us this evening or this day, and you all have a pleasant day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024, Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.